Welcome to episode 3 of the Multinational Money Podcast.
Welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast. I am Jonny, your host, and if you're interested in expat life, financial freedom, and making the most of global opportunities, then this is your podcast. Today, I'm joined by a familiar face, Nicole from Travel to Money, who we've both collaborated on each other's YouTube channels, and I recently appeared on her podcast, the Travel to Money Podcast, not too long ago. Nicole is originally from the US, but spends about half her time there, with the rest of her time being split between Spain and other destinations in the world where she likes to travel. In today's conversation, we're going to look at some of the things we've talked about in previous videos in a bit more detail. We're going to look at Nicole's background. We're going to look into how she got into content creating and how she developed her platform. And we're going to talk a bit more about the 3 property purchases she made in Spain as well. So with that said, let's get right into the episode. All right, Nicole from Travel to Money, welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on your podcast, Jonny. It's super exciting.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, we're both familiar faces on each other's channels and content platforms now because we've collabed and talked quite a bit over the past 4 or 5 months or so. We've both done YouTube videos together. I've appeared on your podcast, and now here you are coming back on my new podcast. So yeah, good. So yeah, for the listeners, a lot of what we've talked about already in our previous video collabs that we've done, or when I've been on Nicole's podcast, we're going to try and maybe go a bit more into the personal aspects of Nicole's life, her experiences, and maybe into a bit more of the details about some of the topics that we've talked about. So we'll start with, who is Nicole? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I initially grew up in San Antonio, Texas. That's where I'm from in the US. And, I had a really sheltered upbringing. And I think some of that, now that I'm older and discovering more things about myself and who I am, and when you start to get to that age in life where you start to see patterns of what you do, I realize that a lot of what I do now with travel and just really loving adventure and experiencing more of the world comes from a lot of the things that happened in childhood. And my world was, like I said, very sheltered. I was homeschooled growing up. It was and this is before the internet too, so you just didn't know much of what was outside of your world. And my family went through a lot of really difficult things when I was around 10 to 12. My mom got very sick and was dealing with a neurological disease that really just turned our whole family upside down. We went from being kind of the little white picket fence family where everything's just kind of going along to really having just a really difficult time for about 10 years. And I think what happened in my personality is a lot of a kind of a result of some of that was that I wanted to not think about the hard things when I didn't have to anymore. And for me, that has been kind of a pattern of what's the next adventure, always planning for the next thing, get up and go. And that's pretty positive. It's not always the best thing because I don't necessarily always deal with the hard things. I'd rather find a new adventure to go on or start a new job or try something new or go to a new country. And I am trying to learn how to take the positives from all of that, which are that I do love to adventure and do things, but trying to grow into the space of dealing with the hard things too. And so anyway, that's just a little bit of a backdrop of some of the things that have led my personality to be kind of what it is now, and trying to learn to lean into the good and the bad of that and figure out how to be kind of the best version of who I am as a result of all of those things. So anyhow, that took me to Florida and some other places, and eventually led me to Spain and to a place where I have the ability to adventure and kind of design a life that is creative and just whatever I want it to be in that time. So
Yeah. So travel, essentially, what you're saying is ended up being a distraction from some of the things going on in your life.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now that you say that, Travel to Money is the name of your channel or your
Yeah.
podcast. At face value, it's very simple. It's like it does what it says on the tin name. But now that you've told your story, and now that I think about what I know about you, being someone who travels a lot, and then someone who improved their financial situation as they went on, it gives so much more meaning to Travel to Money, I think, as a name.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with Travel to Money then. So, how did the idea for Travel to Money as a content creation outlet come about?
Well, in 2018, I was dating someone and he kind of introduced me to this travel YouTube channel. And it was someone that did sailing. I think it was a couple. And he mentioned that they made like $10,000 a week on their YouTube channel, which was insane. And I was like, what in the world? Like, I wasn't into YouTube at the time and I hadn't been watching that much. So it was then that I kind of started watching a few different YouTube channels and trying to understand what that was all about. And then I decided to start traveling with a friend of mine, and we actually created a YouTube channel. And it wasn't something that we probably put 9 months into it and had less than 100 subscribers, and we were really trying to find our way. One of the lessons I learned in that process is that if when you're doing something with someone else, we both had these ambitions to create a YouTube channel, but one of us, we had different ways of going about that. And I think it was interesting to try to navigate that because she had such a big personality and she's really funny and witty, and she doesn't want to script anything. She doesn't want to plan it in advance, and she can go right off the cuff. Well, I can't do that at all. Like, I just am not a super funny person and I don't have that quick wit. I need a plan. And so it was really difficult for us to come up with videos that really made sense with both of us doing them together. And eventually it just kind of fizzled out. And I felt a little discouraged after that and wanting to figure out how to see my way through something like that. And then I came across the channel Our Rich Journey, and I'd been watching them for a few years already. But I love that couple and I love what they do in helping people with their personal finance and the idea of retiring early. And then, of course, they moved to Portugal, which was awesome. And around the time that I bought my first home in Spain, I found that people were so curious about that. And we would, anytime I was going anywhere, my friends were saying, "Oh, this is Nicole. She bought a house in Spain." And then we'd all be talking about that. And I was really passionate about it and in the idea of working toward financial independence. And at some point, I realized after watching the folks on Our Rich Journey that, like, I was like, I can do what they're doing. I can make videos like they're making, and I feel like I can make them at about that same level. And so I've kind of found my lane. And that's when I decided to start Travel to Money, which was right when COVID was taking off. And so I wasn't really able to travel during that time, but I knew I had enough content from travel I had done previously that I could at least get started then. And I also knew at first it was just a YouTube channel for almost a year. I knew that that would be slow, but I thought I just wanted to start and be consistent and do it every week. And so that's really how that all came about. The name Travel to Money was just like, I wanted to be about travel and financial independence. And I need to make that as clear as possible in as, in a few words. And so it's not really, I don't know that it makes perfect sense, but I stuck with it. So
Yeah, I think you and I, as content creators, like travel and money and like international living whilst keeping an element of financial responsibility and maximizing your investment, all this kind of stuff. It's a very small niche, and like you and I think there's probably others out there, but I think you're probably the only other one doing something like in this niche like me as a
Exactly.
content creator as
Yeah,
well.
I haven't
Okay.
seen it a lot. So, but it's also hard to explain in just a few words or make a
Yeah.
name where people get it right away. So maybe we'll come up with something that means all of those things together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think probably you find this as well. Do you find it difficult to strike the balance? Because my audience loves Spain content. I will, of course, give them Spain content, but I know from looking at stats that like some of the financial content, it just doesn't get the same. It doesn't get the same numbers as the Spain content does.
Yeah, I do have a hard time balancing those. Um, I have made, I try to make a balance of Spain, other travel that's not Spain, and then financial independence content or content creation sort of content. When my Instagram took off, I had a reel that went viral and it was about Spain. And so that has made the majority of my audience, they're there because of Spain. And so it is really difficult when part of your niche takes off because they're not necessarily interested in the rest of it. And so it is a hard balance. I have found that I try to gear my Instagram more towards Spain because that's what people are interested in that follow me, and then keep my YouTube a little more balanced and in some sort of rotation, although I do lean heavily into the Spain content. One of the things, though, with that is that not that it's all about what you make financially, because I don't make enough on YouTube for it to make that big a difference, regardless of the category video that I'm filming about. But I have noticed that, for example, I have a video, my most viewed video is about Spain, and I'm at about 30,000 views on that video. But there might be a video that is about the Amazon influencer program that I made that has only 10,000 views, but has made more money than the video about Spain that has 30,000 views. And so there's the financial element too of the group or category that your video is in YouTube and what advertisers are willing to pay. And like I said, I don't make enough now for that to make that big a difference to me. But I think as you grow on YouTube and that could become a bigger consideration with the kind of content, but you also want to make what people want to hear about. And there are a lot more people that make in like finance content than there are making content about Spain, for example. So there's not as much competition in that space either. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. I think I have a video comparing Wise and Revolut, and that has also about 30,000 views. And I think my Spain content that has similar views, it also, like the Wise versus Revolut video also has generated more revenue exactly because of what you said, like the niche is a bit different. So yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting about trying to find the balance. Yeah.
Right, for sure. And I need to watch that video of yours. I saw the thumbnail at one point because I've used Wise for a long time and I'm like, oh, is there something else out there that's similar?
Yeah. Well, I won't give you any spoilers now. Let you enjoy that. Perfect. How long do you spend roughly per week or per month, however you track your time, on Travel to Money making content?
Well, I probably don't spend as much time as I should, although I would say that the majority of my time is spent making my YouTube video every week, and I would probably say that I spend between 5 and 10 hours a week on that. I think I've become a lot faster at it because I get the process a lot better now. When you first start, it takes a bit longer and you have more of a learning curve, but now I would say in the 5 to 8 hour range on that, just specifically on that video every week. I'm not as good as I should be about making content for Instagram and other things, and I should focus more on that. I struggle sometimes to find the time to make the business more than what it is. I have, of course, my website and a few other things that I do within that, but the majority of the time right now is on my YouTube videos. I'd love to be able to expand that more into doing things like developing a course and some other things, but I've had a hard time finding the time to do those other things.
Yeah, I had the same struggles for a very long time. And then starting last year and now particularly this year, I've started to outsource a lot of the the creative process to my videos. So I now have like an editor for YouTube. I have someone managing my social media platforms, and I can definitely that frees up so much more time, and it's allowed me to develop a couple of products, and I will continue to use it to do similar things like you have in mind, like a course, maybe ebooks kind of thing. Have you considered outsourcing anything?
Yeah, I tried an editor once and I didn't get very far down the road with that. I found that I was spending more time reviewing and making changes with them than I was editing the video, if I was editing the video myself. And so I think I could spend a little more time cultivating something there. It's not like someone's going to get that and understand how you want your videos done the very first time around. So I could spend some more time there, but I actually really like the video editing process. And so that's one area. I did also hire someone to kind of help me as an assistant with doing some things for Instagram. And it was definitely helpful, but at the time I was having a hard time turning that into something that made enough sense for me to keep doing it. So it's been more on my poor management side than it has been like the fault of anyone helping me. I just need to have more direction. But I do think it's an excellent idea. And I'm told that as a business owner, that's really something I need to do. So
Yeah, I mean, I read a couple of books this year, like one, The 4 Hour Work Week, and then the second one being A Diary of a CEO. And both of them talk about, optimizing your time and outsourcing work. And yeah, I could, as I say, like it was hard for me to let go because I like being in the creative process. I enjoyed the editing process as well. But I got to the point where it's like, if I really want to grow, yes, it's going to maybe cost me a bit of money. Yes, there's maybe some risk involved, but it's a risk I have to take if I want to take this thing
right.
further.
And I probably need to reach out to other folks like you and say, hey, are you using anyone that has more time to give to someone else? And so, someone that is already reputable and doing a good job. So I need to make some of those connections.
Yeah, great. Okay, so one more question around your content creation. So, how have you monetized it so far? I mean, we've talked about kind of the YouTube partner program. Maybe you're looking at, I think you have coaching available on your website as well. But one that I particularly wanted to explore that we discussed when we spoke last year is the Amazon Influencer Program. Tell us more how people can make money on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That has definitely been the biggest part of my monetization under my travel to money umbrella, even though I don't really consider it, it's not something that I use to promote travel to money, but it's something that I'm able to do because of travel to money. And so, yeah, the Amazon Influencer Program has been fantastic. I came across a guy's YouTube video about a year ago, so I've been doing it for a year now. And it was fantastic. I was watching his video like, is this for real? And while I was watching it, was able to sign up and get into the program. I was still watching his video as I did it. And for those of you who don't know, the influencer program and now became open to micro influencers. So you really don't have to be much of an influencer at all to get into the program. You make Amazon review videos and upload it to the influencer platform, and Amazon puts those videos on the product pages as reviews for people to watch. And if they watch your video for 30 seconds or more and make a purchase, you make a commission. And this is phenomenal for me because I'm not a huge salesperson, so I don't want to be pushing a lot of Amazon products, at least not to my specific audience. But it was a way to make money without even having to push it to my own audience. And that was the part that I thought was phenomenal. And then it's turned out to be wonderful. I personally think that you could easily do that full time if it was something that you wanted to put a lot of time into. I put very little time into it, and I'm bringing in around, I just had my first month over $1,000, but I was probably $700 to $900 a month. But March of 2024 was my first 1,000+ month. I think I made around 1,150, and I probably put 4 or 5 hours of time into it all month. So that's just insane.
Wow.
Now, I have learned a few lessons in the process. I mean, so for me, it's not been one of those things I've prioritized, and I probably should prioritize it more. And the only reason I haven't prioritized it more is because it's not something that's driving my brand that I'm trying to build. It's more the thing that's helping me to maintain my brand because it funds a lot of the things I want to do. But one of the things I learned more recently is the impact of more expensive products. And so the first 6 months, I was doing a lot of whatever I had around my house and things from friends and family. And a friend of mine who started the program about a month after me and is not an influencer, but was able to get into the program. She was able to film some videos of some more expensive products that I didn't have access to. And I saw her bring in she's bringing in more than me every month for sure. She's probably $1,500 to $2,000 a month at this point. And some of that was due to these more expensive products that she was selling. And then I bought a product in, I believe, November or December of this last year for around, maybe a $3,000 product, but it wasn't for the purpose of making an Amazon video. It just happened to be a product that I needed. And now when I sell one of those, every time I sell one, I'm making $115 to $150 just on that one product sale. And so in April or March of this last month, I sold 3 of those, which is what put me over that $1,000 mark because of those larger item sales. And so then it's like, well, what happens when you might not sell them. You don't sell one every day. At least I'm not. I sold 3 in that month. But it's like, okay, so if you end up having 10 or 15 really large items that each of them sells once or twice a month, well, you're making like $100 a day on each of those commissions. But you also don't want to necessarily buy 10 or 15 $3,000 products. So it's figuring out through friends or family different products that might be available for you to film. But I do think that's the latest lesson that I've learned about really how to make the most out of it, would be getting some of those mid to high value items in your portfolio. So.
Yeah, it's like selling 500 Toyotas versus one
Right.
Lamborghini, for example,
Exactly.
that kind of
Exactly.
thing. Yeah, I've definitely noticed it as well because I have to say, by the way, yeah, thank you for the plug for Amazon. I'm not quite at your numbers yet. To date, I have around $120, $140, I think, in total commissions, which is not bad. And again, just using items in my house. But yeah, I think what you said is really important. Also, the different categories that you decide to go for as well, because electronics, for example, they have lower percentage
Right.
commissions because they tend to be higher priced items. But things like games or household items, I think I've seen as well, tend to have not only good like commission percentages, but good demand as well, because people tend to want them a lot for their home.
Absolutely. You'll also find, I don't do a lot of product research. There are influencers that are way better at this than I am and that are bringing in $5,000, $10,000, or even $15,000 a month, which I think is insane. But it's cool because it's out there and it's available. But you will find that you also have items that are not necessarily super expensive, but they sell a lot. Like I had a pair of Adidas that I reviewed, and I would sell them all the time. And I'm making $2 or $3 on every commission. I probably sold 4 or 5 a day. And that adds up a lot over time. Now, shoes get returned a lot. So I will advise on that you'll end up getting some of them returned, not all of them. But there are a few items that you'll have that will be your real consistent for a while, bringing in lots of smaller sales. But when there's a lot of them, it definitely adds up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. In terms of what this means for your business, I have the same kind of dilemma myself. It's not developing my brand in any way. And I also don't necessarily give it the priority that it probably should have, but it's like the cash cow that brings in some money to fund additional developments, those kind of things, additional things that you want to do with your content creation. So it is difficult to strike a balance. I totally agree
For sure.
with that. Yeah. Okay, besides your content creation, still staying on kind of your professional side, tell us a little bit about your full-time job, because you do have a full-time job outside of outside of content creation?
Yes. So I have done work with a nonprofit organization for over 12 years now as the director of communications. And so through that process, have learned graphic design, web design. It's really where I started in video editing and other things for many, many years. And it's something I've been really passionate about because of the fact that Travel 20 has been growing. I've been in conversation with my boss for probably over a year now, a very long time, about me figuring out a transition point for me, just because there's only so long I can do all of the things. And so actually that will be kind of wrapping up middle of this year. I'll move from being a full-time employee to someone who's doing contract work for them. It'll probably still be quite a lot of work at first and might phase out over time. But that's what I've been doing for a very long time. Been very fortunate to have something I'm passionate about. Of course, nonprofits, that's not the best paying sector, but you get to do something that is meaningful, and that's meant a lot to me for a really long time.
Yeah. Wow. So that's impressive that you're at a point where you can actually walk away from, not fully walk away, but you can give more time to your side hustle. That's really cool.
I'm excited about it. I've also recently taken on another part-time job helping someone that does work like me. So I'm actually doing some podcast editing for someone and some website work with them as well. Very part-time, like 5, maybe 10 hours a week. But this is the kind of dilemma that I'm in now too. I like working for other people. I just don't like having the restrictions of time, like, where you have to be in place from 9 to 5. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm stepping more into contract work with my current job, because I want to be able to work on the things that I want to work on at the time I want to work on them. So I don't mind doing work for other people, but I want that kind of independence of time where I can kind of set those boundaries for myself. So it might look like that for a long time. It might even look like that permanently, where I do some of my own content creation, but also still do some element of work for other people, just because I really enjoy doing it. So,
yeah, nice. And so currently, how do you balance your time? How do you manage everything you have to do with Travel to Money, but still, act as a director for a nonprofit, which is obviously a role with a lot of responsibility.
It's been difficult in the last few months, actually. I work all the time on something. So every hour of my day is pretty much taken up. And what I would say is if you're becoming a content creator and you are starting, at first you can kind of start and keep up with that well. And you need another job to maintain your life, right? And so there will be a few years of sacrifice, and what that sacrifice is, I think, is mainly of other hobbies you would usually do or participate in. That's what that's been for me. My YouTube channel became my main hobby, and so I sometimes struggle to keep that balance with just regular life and people and being intentional about the people in my life. But I know that it's not a permanent thing. It's just, as I scale up into something else, figuring out how to eventually get back into having other hobbies again, things like that. So it's just my 3 or 4 year hobby while I build that. And for me, I do work very specific hours for my job, and then I just build everything else kind of around that. All of my coaching and when I'm working on my videos and things like that is just whatever's outside of those hours is filled with all of those other things. But I say the last 3 months have been difficult because this year has been really insane for me. Personally, I had to move. I bought a new condo. I had to travel home for a family emergency. I had to go to Guatemala for some meetings for my job. And so I say had to go to Guatemala. It was incredible to go to Guatemala, but it was still like, you're trying to pack it in with everything else. And it was just been like, whew, it's been a ride this year. So.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for managing it all.
Well, I took a tip from you. I think we were talking about scheduling something, and it sounded like you had a day of the week where you kind of put your work down. And I thought, man, I need that kind of boundary in my life. So I really took something from that when I heard you say that, and I still remember it, and I think about that often.
Yeah, for context for the listeners, yeah, Sunday I kind of is my boundary where I say to myself, I don't do anything related to work or Millennials with Money or anything that's not fun, like not fun. That sounds funny, doesn't it? But okay, I might go work out on a Sunday, for example. But Sunday is time for me, basically. It's what is to make sure that I can clear my mind, that I'm not burning out, that I'm not overworking myself with anything. So that's kind of, yeah, because we were talking about recording on a Sunday, and I wanted to make sure that I kept that time for myself, and I'm glad that it's
Yeah,
worked for you.
I love that. I
A
think
few times
it
too.
reminds me that you can kind of set those boundaries and make sure you're staying in a good space for yourself.
Okay, Nicole, now let's talk about Spain and your many houses that you have there. So obviously right now you're in Spain as we're recording this. You spend time between Spain and the US. How do you determine or how do you decide like how to allocate your time between the two of them?
Well, initially when I purchased my first home here, I thought I'd like to spend 6 months out of the year in Spain, 3 months on, 3 months off, and it's not really turned out to be that. COVID kind of threw a wrench in things anyway, and so I'm still trying to settle back into what life looks like after that and what travel looks like after that. I love to be in Spain. I think really for me, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 months, once or twice a year, will be the amount of time I spend in Spain. I'd love to be here more, but I need to spend time back at home as well. And I also love to travel to new places. And so fitting it all in can be kind of complicated sometimes. But I would say that that's about what I'm looking at now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well. Like as much as we love one place, or we might, this is kind of in the context of people who buy like a holiday home, or they God forbid, going to a timeshare somewhere. Like you always spend your time in that one place, and you won't necessarily get the chance to explore other parts of the world. That for me, like you, is like definitely worth. I want to see more of the world. I'll have like my places where I really love to go, but I won't go there at the expense of not seeing something
Right,
else
right,
necessarily.
exactly.
How has travel, in general, or living in Spain, changed you as a person or your perspective on
Oh,
life?
that's a really good question. I would say in many places that I've traveled to, and Spain included, there is a work-life balance that we don't really have in the U.S. And there's something really great about that that I am trying to learn to adopt. I certainly haven't figured that out entirely, but I look at it and I love it, and I think, oh, like I'm envious of that, and I want to lean into that a little bit more. But also, I think there in the US, we have a very individualistic approach to a lot of things. And you can tell as you meet people, and definitely in Spain specifically, where there is this idea of, hey, you pay taxes to help your community. And you like a lot of it's about the community. And how what you do impacts other people. And so I think that's something I've really noticed and taken because you just don't see that as much in the community in the US. And if that's all you've ever been surrounded with until you start traveling and getting out other places, you don't realize how different that can be in a different country. And so Spain has definitely impacted me in those ways. And I think other places as well. I particularly love like yesterday I got a text from one of my neighbors and she was like, hey, I made this food and I have some extra, why don't you come pick it up? And there's just this very like neighborly talk to people on the street. I'm sure there are places in the US that have that, but that's something I've definitely taken from my time here that I really love to lean into while I'm here is just the not just the aspect of having your own friends that are in your community, but literally the people outside of your door in your community. And so that's something I really love here.
Yeah. That's an interesting one about community that you said, because I think it's definitely a very European mindset that, like, in politics in that sense, we'll not go too much into it, but you know what I mean. Um, and yeah, it's funny as well in the town I live in. Like, it's one of the biggest cities, like outside of Madrid. In the Madrid region. But still, like people in the neighborhood, people in the building, the odd person in the shop, or when I've played basketball, if I see them in the street, like we say hello and we stop and talk for a bit and everything. And yeah, you might do that in the UK a little bit. Again, depends on your neighborhood, but yeah, definitely a Spanish thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about your properties, Nicole. You have how many now? 3?
Well, I had 3. I now really have one, main one. That I've ended up, because of Instagram, actually. I complain about Instagram sometimes, but I've really met the most wonderful people from there. Have been able to sell. I sold my first property to some folks from California, and then the second property going to be working on with someone else, kind of in partnership there. And then I'm really just focused on renovating the third property, and the sale of the first property is what really has allowed me to do that. And so I'm kind of turning the third property into the place that will be mine. And also, yeah, navigating more recently, I just kind of put a poll out the other day, because I do coaching sessions with people about buying homes in Spain, because people are so interested in that. And this particular woman said, I'd really maybe be interested in co-ownership with someone, because a lot of people like me were only coming for 3 months out of the year or 6 months out of the year. And so if you partnered with someone, you wouldn't have to come out as much out of pocket to buy a home, like if you shared a home with someone. And so I asked a group that I have like a broadcast channel on my Instagram, and it doesn't have nearly as many people, maybe 750 folks that are part of that channel. And I just asked how many of you would be interested in co-ownership if I kind of look into that, because I kind of think that I'm not personally going to be buying more properties anytime soon, just because I never meant to do that in the first place. It just kind of happened. But I want to help people facilitate what they're looking to do. And so I put that poll out there, and out of, I think maybe 350 people had seen it, and over 120 of them said they were either interested or very interested in co-owning a property with 1, 2, or 3 other people. And I was like, wow, it was more than I thought. I just didn't want to do a bunch of research about it and then find out that no one was really interested. And so I had talked to my attorney about it, and they said, absolutely, we can make those arrangements for folks. So that might be kind of the next property adventure for me, is helping other people navigate something like that, or just buying homes in Spain. I help people with that too. So that's probably where the property adventure is landing for me, is more in helping other people, and then eventually finishing this house I'm working on. So
yeah, that's really interesting about co-ownership. I think with the property market in Spain particularly, like business people are getting more and more creative with what's out there. Like you talk about co-ownership of like a property. There's a Spanish YouTuber called Uribais. Like he launched his own business called habitacion.com, I think it is. And it's a similar kind of concept, but it's kind of like you buy the right to a room in a property, if I remember correctly. And basically like what you pay to rent the room, you're building up equity in the property. So you end up in some kind of co-ownership model.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I think I was thinking about it after I was trying to look at the pros and cons for those buying. And I thought, a lot of folks in Spain, or the folks from Spain, can be very frustrated with all of the people coming over and buying up properties here. And I thought, well, that might actually help solve that problem if you had 3 or 4 owners of a property, versus all 3 or 4 of those people owning different properties. You don't have as much impact on the market that way for Spaniards. So I don't know if they'd be happy about that either, but maybe. So it seems like it wouldn't be as bad. So.
Yeah. And so what was the original goal with the property purchases? Were they like investments for like fix and flip, or were they lifestyle purchases? How did you go about? What was the goal when you bought like the 3 properties?
Yeah, for the most part, completely just lifestyle. I mean, I did turn the first one into an Airbnb for a little bit, but it's not on a great street. And that didn't really, I didn't need to do the Airbnb there. I just wanted a place that I could have somewhere else in the world that was actually affordable because everything in the US is so expensive. And I loved Spain and just the ability to be in Europe for a good part of the year. And, having a place that other friends and family could come use as well. The other two purchases fell into my lap entirely. They were both on my same street. And one home I bought for €5,000 and the other home I bought for €9,000. And I was not looking. I was not searching. I was just not interested in other homes at the time because I had the house that I wanted and I thought that I would always have. But sometimes those great opportunities just fall in your lap and you have to make the most of them. And I am a sucker for a project. And so when those came about, I jumped on it and I'm glad I did. The $5,000 house is a video about that is what ended up making my Instagram really take off and has helped me to find that a lot of people are looking for good options in Spain. And so that's been a lot of fun to explore that. And now with the $9,000 house, that's the one that I'm going to be living in after selling the other one. So yeah, it's been a journey, but that's kind of mainly lifestyle with possibly little bits of investment that kind of come out of it. So
Yeah, to be fair, if someone came to me with these kind of offers, I think I would snatch those. I paid more for like a storage unit in Madrid than you paid for one of your houses. That's how
pretty
crazy
wild.
it is. Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow, I'm not looking in the right place for property investments.
Oh, that's funny.
So I guess you said no more property purchases planned in Spain. What about you? Well, you said you got a new condo like in the US. Anywhere else in the world? Are you thinking of buying maybe medium or long term?
I would consider it if those opportunities came about. Financially, for me right now, I'm focused on wanting to pay off my condo in Florida. My goal is to have that paid off in 6 years before I turn 50, which is really crazy number to think about. I still feel like I'm 17, so
That's what counts. That's what counts.
So that's kind of my financial focus. I see a lot of other people doing these big things, and these folks are multimillionaires, and I'm like, that's great for them. I'm on a budget, so what I can afford to do and what I want to do are two different things. I think if I had unlimited money, I'd be buying up places in different countries and renovating them for fun or doing different things, but just depending on where my finances go in the next few years, that'll determine if I do much of anything else. But I'm pretty content with having the place in Florida and having the place in Spain. And maybe just want to help other people with what they're doing might be my avenue for projects in the future.
Yeah, it's a nice setup anyway. I have one property in the US, one up in Spain.
Yeah, I can't complain about it. It's definitely a privilege, so I'm thankful.
Yeah, nice. Nicole, any final tips before we go to the last question? Anything that we've talked about that you want to, give encouragement to anybody?
Well, I would just say whatever it is you want to do. If you want to be a content creator, if you want to buy a house in Spain, if you want to travel the world, there's a way to do it. And so I think, I just want to encourage folks that if there's something you want to do, there's a path to get there, and I believe in you. You can do it.
Amazing. Fantastic tips. Great that you've been able to share your experience as well. I'm sure a lot of people listening will be very grateful for it and will take something from it. So, Nicole, I introduced the tradition on this podcast as the last question being a fun question for the guests. So, your fun question is, you must have some funny story that's happened while you've been in Spain. Tell us about it.
Well, I do have a pretty embarrassing moment that I think is funny for other people. So I was actually on my first trip to Spain back in 2017. I came to Spain for about 2 weeks and was staying in the town of Oliva, and I had rented a car from Valencia. And I parked the car on one of the many streets that all look the same to me. And I thought that I lost the car or that it was towed because I couldn't find it anywhere, and ended up going to the police station where I was like trying to like use Google Translate or something, saying I think my car was towed, and the police officer is looking at me like, I don't think your car was towed. Like, you could kind of tell he's looking at me like, we don't really do that very often, you know? And he ended up having to go find the rental car for me. Embarrassingly, it was parked a couple of streets over from where I thought it was, and all the streets kind of looked the same. And so that's kind of my funny story from Spain. It was very embarrassing. I felt like just the typical American. I try not to be that like American tourist. So, but I really failed that day. So it was pretty funny. But he was nice and very gracious. So I was thankful.
That's good, yeah. No, I think in Spain, unless you park really, really bad, or unless you're in Madrid or Barcelona,
Right.
probably, then the risk of being towed is
Very
like,
slim. Yeah.
it's minimal. Yeah. Yeah, because in Madrid and Barcelona, like finding a parking, it's like I told you, like before we
Yeah.
got on this podcast, like if I'm slightly late, I'm trying to find a parking space
Oh, I can imagine.
or walking from that parking space
Right,
back
right.
home.
Exactly.
So yeah. Great. Well, Nicole, been a pleasure speaking to you as always. I'll leave the link to Nicole's YouTube channel, Instagram in the video description on YouTube and in the episode notes on podcast platforms.
Thanks, Johnny, for having me.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode and I hope you got something out of it and found it valuable for your situation. Remember, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can sign up as a YouTube member and you can also become a patron as well. And in return, you'll get access to exclusive content such as live streams with me. You'll also get to find out who are the upcoming guests on the podcast in advance of them appearing, and you'll get the opportunity to ask them questions which they will answer, and that will then be shared with you in an exclusive video. With that said, till next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.